Hello, welcome live to a very spontaneous episode. I'm live here in Tulum at Digital Jungle, which is a co-working space with Franz Josef Hallmeier from Seeds and David, and with a bunch of very interesting people that really care about the future of Tulum. So what I find particularly interesting, I learned today that the fastest growing municipality of the whole of Mexico is actually Tulum, and it's a booming tourist region with all of the problems of like unregulated boom regions. So the wastewater flowing into the ocean, construction going haywire, it attracts a lot of money, a lot of tourists, and obviously we want to build like a regenerative culture here. So time and again throughout the evening, most likely a couple of the people from the audience here will directly swap seats with me. There will be some background noise inevitably. That's the way it is when we bootstrap things. And having said that, I'm happy just to hand over to you, David, and introduce a little bit Regen Tulum and what you're up to here.
Okay. Is everybody?
You can do it through my mic. All good.
So I'm just going to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my name is David Benjamin, and I'm super excited to be here with this amazing group of people. It's really heartwarming that you all came together to hear your stories and where you're coming from. Really makes me excited about the possibilities for us to create a shift here in Tulum. For those of you who are not fully aware, on the live stream, Tulum is headed for ecological collapse within, I don't know, probably a number of years. It could be very much like Playa del Carmen and Cancun having destroyed their ecological systems in part, and to a certain extent become like large shopping malls, or mainly shopping areas. Anyway, I think that there's a real possibility for us to come together in this magical land that we call Tulum, and create something different, create a different future than the one that we can see is kind of unfolding at the moment. The possibility here for me really started 25 years ago when I first came to Tulum. I was meditating at the ruins and I felt the energy of the place. It was the first time in my life that I ever felt the energy of a place, and that really was I'd say a cairns along my path in terms of reconnecting to the natural world and understanding the importance of that in my life. I came back this past May and I met Mish. She educated me. She happened to be my next door neighbor, and she educated me about all things Tulum. She told me it wasn't, all the beauty and the beach and all that was quite apparent, that there were some things in the background that were happening that really needed to be taken care of, or we could get to a situation where Tulum, like I said, would become more like a Playa del Carmen or Cancun. She showed me a movie called The Dark Side of Tulum as well. And it came apparent to me, I hadn't necessarily planned on staying in Tulum, that maybe I could bring something there. And the thing that I really felt like would be the opportunity for me here is to inject the best of Web3 technology into the conversation around bringing community together to address these ecological problems that Tulum is facing. So that's blockchain, NFTs, DAOs, which we'll talk about here tonight. And we have Franz, who's a co-founder of Seeds and Hypha. I'm super excited to have him here. But I'll just say a little bit deeper in terms of Regen, the direction that we've chosen to take this is, one, to have a directory, develop a directory that's kind of like Yelp for regeneration in Tulum. We also want to have a mechanism for what we're calling decentralized public works. So this is the notion, if this municipality isn't doing what's needed to regenerate this place, well, maybe the community can step in and we can have our own decentralized public works. And that would be basically the community deciding on what projects get funded and supported. But that begs the question, how would we fund it? So we thought a lot about that, and what we came up with initially, and it's still on the table, is a community currency that would have some type of transaction fee that would feed into a regenerative projects fund. So that's one element. There's a white paper that I invite all of you to take a look at and weigh in on. That's on our Discord, and we'll be giving you the information about the Discord and how to get there later on this evening. And then the other thing that I'm super excited about, because it's actionable right now, whereas the community currency is going to take money and organization and other things. Right now, we can get started with NFTs. And there's a significant energy right now here in Tulum to do place-based NFT collections. Those are my two big focuses right now. Okay, that's the other thing. I just came back from the jungle. I was in the jungle in Brazil doing a lot of contemplation about what the next steps for us. And it became very clear to me from Abuelita, I was told that it is time for us as Regen Tulum to be transitioning to a decentralized autonomous organization. We need to make that shift now. So that's basically a organization that's operated on the blockchain, so it's completely transparent, that enables a community to allocate resources. And that's where we're at. We're needing to move over to Discord from WhatsApp as part of that transition to a DAO. So my focus over the next couple months is DAOs, NFTs, and hopefully a big launch party for Regen Tulum in mid-January. Yeah. So welcome everybody. Thank you for here. Put your hands together for each other because it's such a beautiful group of people. And I'd like to now introduce Franz. Why don't you tell us a little about you, yourself, your story, how you got here to this chair right now, and a little bit about Seeds and Hypha. I know that's a lot, but you can work with that.
Thank you, David, and thank you everybody for sharing the space with us today. Thank you, Alistair, for bringing us together and holding that space too, and setting up the bootstrap for this to happen and even go live. My name is... No, you can't hear?
Yeah, just speak louder.
Yeah, my name is Franz. Was expressing my gratitude, and really good to be here and see the faces of regeneration in Tulum. I just arrived from Guatemala. I'm actually born in Guatemala, so we share the same bioregion of Mesoamerica, which is also something that I want to speak about today. Beyond DHOs or DAOs, we're also expanding that notion around bioregionalism. So we've been also seeding across this year's decentralized autonomous bioregions. So the evolution of DAOs, really not to automate humans away from technology, but put humans at the center of what technology can do for us and serve regeneration. My story, much like yours, a bit of a corporate refugee, realizing that serving some systems that are not really regenerative by design, but in the contrary, degenerative by design, really triggered in early stages of my development something that really couldn't come to peace with. And upon deep introspection, one of the things I found was really the nature of money, what it does to us, what it does to our environment, how it's organized, how it's shaped. And that's, for me, a big epiphany. And some key factors from that nature of money struck out. First of all, money is fiat, decentrally created. And is created out of debt. That means a handful of people decide what the rest of us value. And obviously, they do not understand the value of a nature if they don't even see it, or the value of healing, or the value of spirituality, or the value of art. So all of these things are in essentially a erosion of value that is continuously pushing people and pushing nature into transforming it into paper-based money, and also how it's distributed. It's not only created out of debt and centrally created, meaning that the value is specifically focused on financial capital and not all these other forms of capital. And it's distributed through trickle-down economics, meaning that this handful of people who create money also decide how it's distributed. And that is shaped, as you can imagine, as a pyramid, where the top and the bottom are completely disconnected. Along that journey, upon really understanding what the nature of money is, I came to know, first of all, Bitcoin, which was a mind-opening for me, and it was mind-blowing what we could do with this blockchain technology. But I also knew that there's more equitable ways of doing things. You know, credit where credit is due. Bitcoin is fantastic. It really can create a lot of value, but at the same time, it also has copied a lot of the mechanisms of centralization of power that the system that we're trying to leave behind still has, meaning that you can only engage if you have more money, which leads in concentration of capital. So we were thinking hard and strong in terms of how to really reshape that, and what we came up is really observing nature. We came up with the best concept of money is actually seeds. It's essentially the ancient future technology, and in places like Mesoamerica, here where the Mayas or the Aztecs or the Olmecs, all of these ancient civilizations have been already traditionally being used in seeds as a medium of exchange. Why? For various reasons. Because one of them being you couldn't hoard it. If you have abundance from nature, what you did was actually share it with your neighbor, share it with your communities, and bring trust and cohesion. There's really interesting writings, for example, when the Spaniards first came to this region and were trying to really acquire the gold, which, if you see it, it's very silly. You know, we're spending so much effort and so much energy digging gold from the earth, only to create it and then bury it again under the earth to control it. So it's really very little utility, while we could actually be doing things differently. So seeds stands for sowing equitable and ecological decentralized societies. We've been in development for more than 5 years, and November 5th, 2019, we launched this and essentially gifted to the world, because it's a citizen-owned financial system where every user has a direct voice in the evolution of it. And what it is, it's when we talk about in the crypto space, we speak about stable coins. But most of the time, the stable coins are not really stable because they're pegged to the US dollar, which is intrinsically unstable. As you guys know, in this last few years, I think just in this year, 40% of all the dollars in the history of the Federal Reserve were created in 1 year. That means that all our savings are really vanishing. And that's speeding more and more. And yeah, all our labor, our contributions are really not valued by that. It's not a good enough store of value. So what we've done with seeds is created a intrinsically stable currency, where for the first time we can really measure the velocity of exchange within an economy, and we can really balance that demand for exchange in real time to the supply of currency in an ecosystem, which creates intrinsically stable currency, intrinsically across time. So it's positioned to be an ideal medium of exchange, where our labor, where the cost of an apple, a banana, can be consistent across time, but also across borders, because as we know, blockchain is limitless in terms of borders. We can transfer money or seeds anywhere in real time, and instead of being charged fees for using your hard-earned capital, the system rewards you for its use, meaning that whenever you're using seeds, you're actually contributing to the regenerative economy, that from which you actually receive benefits when the new money is created and distributed to all the accounts centrally. So to give you guys a summary of what has been going this last few years, since we've launched, we have right now more than 600 organizations across the world and are present in more than 100 countries, where we have communities like this rising up to the occasion to give value to those regenerative contributions, where communities are identifying we need to create permaculture farms, we need to create women cooperatives for giving value to artisans, we're creating educational capacity building programs to really raise consciousness, all of these things. And you are, as a citizen, able to request funding from the pool of initial tokens that are created, and the citizens approve or disapprove of those proposals. And if they pass, you receive the seeds to make those projects come to life.
Can I just comment on that?
Yeah.
Because I really think for everybody listening is actually pretty interesting. So when I was studying macroeconomics like 20 years ago, I did not know, but in some companies, in some countries of the world, in Germany, for example, it's legal to issue parallel currencies. It's not legal in many countries. And in Germany, there are actually like round about 100 parallel currencies. They have nothing to do with the euro. The thing is just the amount of energy you usually, just from an administrative point of view, need to like put into the project to like issue a parallel like local currency is like huge, and usually also like distributed within the region. So the most successful example in Germany, which by the way is pretty successful, has in more than 20 years, they just celebrated like a 20 years anniversary. It's called the Chiemgauer, in like a very beautiful region in the Chiemgau in the south of Germany. And they have an overall circulation of around about 1 million euros equivalent. So they exchange it in a like 1-to-1 ratio. But that shows you the very, very, very like slow growth, because it's like hard to adopt. It's called Chiemgau. And what I find particularly interesting is like with that amount of work that you already put in, like issuing a parallel currency that's like locally based, including like a plug and play logic to really set up like a DAO and invite your people, is like directly available on an interface that's as simple to use as Mighty Networks and Facebook and Instagram. So it's literally like plug and play, just you know.
And I'd like to just add something. We had a conversation earlier about the possibility of giving the people who showed up here some seeds, right?
Absolutely.
Is that still a possibility?
Absolutely.
So could we tie that to people who join the Discord, and we can do that?
Yeah. So right now.
So would any of you be willing to join our Discord, and we're gonna give you some seeds? Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
And it works like that. So essentially, seeds embodies the gift economy. So in order to initiate an economy, and also more importantly, the web of trust. So seeds operates on a web of trust from human to human. So you need to know someone from the community to request an invite, and you literally initiate or provide a wallet to someone by gifting them at a minimum 5 seeds. So it also kind of generates the spirit of gifting and creating value for all. So we would be very happy to initiate. And there's a few things that I would like to speak about Regenerate Tulum in terms of how we can structure the tools that we're building to serve your regenerative purposes. There's 2 things I wanted to share, and I have some presentations if you guys want to go through them. But one is, so Seeds is essentially, you could see it as a global DAO with its own stable currency that you can exchange. But another key component that we've been building is the DHO. And we see this as the evolution of a DAO. I briefly mentioned. And DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, essentially you could see it as a venture cooperative with a defined membership, with a defined form of governance in terms of how decisions are made, and a defined mechanism to distribute value across that network. And we have this DHO, in short, we call it do, and it's actually do for doing, because it's all about creating action and really giving value to contributions, and contributions in multiple forms of capital, meaning communities can self-organize around, for example, if you have land, you can stake that land into the trust, and already we're developing DeFi protocols that give value or yields from that land ownership. Likewise, contributions, that's one key important one. Many people don't have money to buy Bitcoin, for example. But what we're doing is that seeds or other tokens are earned through contributing to that. And that equals the playing field. Anyone without any cent can actually go there, contribute with their intellect, contribute with their labor, and also earn tokens in representation. So that's one key component of the mechanisms that we're building, is this sense of reciprocity, that really every contribution gets a value back.
How do they figure out what contribution they can make?
And that's up to each community itself. So, for example, in what you were mentioning, here, for example, in Tulum, you guys are identifying what are the requirements for that community. You mentioned, for example, wastewater flowing out into the cenotes, into the ocean. One contribution could be figuring out how to resolve all the layers of what a regenerative water treatment system would be, and that would be essentially an open call for anyone who has that intellect. You would define roles, you would define guilds around what is the regeneration of your bioregion, and also define the rewards. You can also define the rewards in pesos that are transcribed to other forms of currencies, and have that token have that representation of the value of those contributions.
Could we set up a whole set of community incentives where we say, oh, if you show up to an event, you get this. If you go to a beach cleanup, you get this. If you organize one, you get this.
Exactly.
If you create some kind of action and it brings out X number of people, you get
exactly like that.
Okay.
And that's a perfect bridge to a little presentation I want to show. As I mentioned, I'm just arriving from Guatemala, from Lecatitlan, where we are building the structure there for the decentralized autonomous cooperative or bioregion.
Just share. Maybe we run through the presentation first.
Are you just sharing? It's
Yeah.
not working?
Yeah.
No, it's working.
I just want to mention, as you can tell, the kitchen is open, and if anybody's hungry, please support them. Digital Jungle has been really gracious in terms of allowing us to be here and really welcoming us, the regenerative community, to be here for events. So feel free to walk on up.
1 second, trying to get this going.
And while he's doing this, I'll just have a little commercial and say that I'm super duper focused on wanting to put together a team to really do the heavy lifting, the jump start of a DAO here in Tulum. And I don't want it to just be the community of people who self-identify as regenerators, but really getting this DAO deeply into the Tulum community. So the locals, connecting with the Mayan community, other people who've been living here for dozens, if not decades as well, and bringing all that expertise to bear. So if there's anyone here who's really excited about this notion about learning about decentralized autonomous organizations, or DOs, DHOs, as Franz is talking about, this would be a really great opportunity to come in and, get your hands dirty and just learn on the fly about how these things work. Definitely, we're looking for people who can put in, quarter to half-time or full-time effort, and that team that comes together around that will get compensated, right? I mean, that's real work, and it's really valuable work at this time. So I'm hoping that either you or people that will be interested in jumping in that way. So
thanks, David. Yeah, and this is what you're saying, David, is the key. It's all about collaboration, and in a financial system that is cooperative by design, more value, aggregated value creates more value for the whole. So it's literally a venture cooperative. And in that sense, what we're also doing beyond Tulum is the integration of the Mesoamerican bioregion, which shares a lot in culture. Coming from Lake Atitlan, we have some examples that kind of give you guys some ideas of what is possible. Here we were weaving a lot with the Mayan elders and really asking them what they value, what can we really give regenerative value into the ecosystems. And one of the key things they say is obviously water, because it's something that we all share. And the cosmology of the Mayas, which is also reflected here in Tulum, is that of the sacredness of water. And that's also very particular for Lake Atitlan, which shares this waterway. It's also the biggest lake in Central America, and it's very sacred for the multiple cultures that live there and the tourism that comes there. But as many places, it's also suffering from a lot of challenges, whether it's deforestation, agrochemical overuse, erosion of arable soil, ecosystem collapse, food and water insecurity, lack of good jobs. And all of that is right now in grave danger of ecosystem collapse. And the idea was, how can we bring about those efforts where you have an entire lake basin, 3 different language groups around that lake, where there's already hundreds of NGOs doing one aspect of regeneration, but they're not working together. How we can create this collaborative to give value to those contributions in an integrative way. Here you guys can see the algal bloom. So that thing in the middle is the result of all the black waters that flow into the lake, and that really damages the whole ecosystem.
Wow.
This already mentioned, so I'm going to skip. So these are our tools, which we'll send to you guys soon. So you can see a global passport with 5 main components: a wallet, a marketplace where all of these organizations and people can exchange their goods and services, a place for connection where ideas can be exchanged and from then activated through forums. And last but not least, what I mentioned, the organizational governance component, where each of these players can already request for funds, request for ideas in terms of ownership and how they want to distribute.
Something that just popped out at me was minimum viable society. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of products, we were thinking about really what tools does the community need to self-organize and implement these changes in a way that's fun, in a way that's effective, and in a way that really can create value. And I think some of you are familiar with the passport, which is what I mentioned, but then the expansion of that is the DAO, or the Decentralized Human Organization, which is this ecosystem of organizations and individuals sharing purpose, raising capital together with venture funds, in which each member has a direct voice towards managing the treasury. And at the same time, from that place, you can already start integrating the whole Web 3.0 component. So that's also something that I want to speak about. And just to summarize, the key functions of this tool is decentralized payroll and contribution accounting, meaning that you as a community can define what are those contributions that are needed to get to that vision of a regenerated Tulum, attribute value to those through tokens, and the decentralized payroll, which allows you to essentially automate contributions going in, remuneration going out.
I think this is such a key part. The existing paradigm and system, it doesn't value a lot of the things that need to be valued. And because of that, we're in this situation where things are falling apart. But you're talking about a way that we can value things that are not being valued.
Exactly.
Okay.
So essentially complementing multiple forms of capital. Right now, our world is dominated by only this myopia of financial capital. What we're able to do with the token economy is give value to all the other things, whether it is nature, whether it is intellect, whether it is spiritual capital. Now we can attribute value and distribute value to that. This is how the platform is looking. So we've been actually using this to build seeds. That means that we have right now more than 100 people contributing actively all across the world, organizing their talents, their skills towards building all of these other tools. And this next iteration of the DAO, which is right now we have more than 50 DAO proposals coming in. So we have this concept of multi-tenancy. So essentially uniting multiple bioregions, communities, villages into a decentralized whole with its unique form of governance and its unique form of attributing and distributing value.
What chain are you on? What blockchain are you all using? And is it proof of stake or proof of work?
Stake? We're using, it's a less known blockchain, but it's a big tip if you guys, it's one of the most powerful blockchains out there, and the most energy efficient blockchain out there is called Telos, and it's a fork of EOS.io, and it's really what allows for this fee-free transaction. So essentially all of this governance protocols, all of the voting that happens is 100% on chain. So it's immutable, intamperable, uncensorable, and at the fastest speed that we can do.
Fee-free. So Ethereum is charging $150 per transaction. You're saying this one is free to do a transaction?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the energy that's needed to do a transaction is negligible?
Minimal.
So an NFT being put on this blockchain is
yes.
Negligible energy?
We have already NFT platforms. So you can already have NFT mintings that cost nearly nothing, like fractions of cents, and that are incredibly fast. So I would also recommend that.
And what about getting money on and off this? So if we were to spin up a governance token for Regen Tulum, would people be able to buy it if we decided to configure it that way? And if they were to do that, how would they do that? Is there an application, a mobile application? Do we use seeds, or how would that all happen?
Great question. So there's multiple answers to that. So this is essentially the governance and the structure is built on Telos, but what we're actually doing here is integrating multiple treasuries. So you can have Bitcoin, you can have your Ethereum treasury. What I would recommend Tulum to do is to set up a Regenerate Tulum fund, where you can actually look for all of those contributions in multiple forms of capital, whether it is Bitcoin, whether it is fiat, and you have different treasurers for that have the treasury badge, which I'll show you next. And all of the fun things that we can do is, for example, what we're doing in Lecatitlan 2, for example, is a concept where every investment into the bioregion receives a value exchange in token. So essentially you can co-own a bit of the infrastructure of this meta layer of contributions that we're all co-creating, and that obviously has a value that is also appreciating as regeneration happens. What we're also building, and I'll show you guys later, is a decentralized exchange where all of these local tokens, whether it is a Tulum token, can be exchanged with other tokens across the world to also provide liquidity. So what we're doing is essentially imagine a regenerative Wall Street where all of these regenerative futures that can be created in different bioregions can be exchanged and invested in multiple forms of capital.
What space, what
It's what phase? It's already live. You can actually, yeah, I'll show it.
So does everyone here know what liquidity is? And if you don't, put your hands up so we can get him to explain
I'll explain anyways, because we have
it.
so liquidity can be meaning multiple things, but for the average Jose on the street, it means, can I use this token to buy my
coffee
or
sugar.
my food? So there's different angles to that liquidity. So for example, what we're focusing first and foremost in seeds is regenerative agriculture. Why? Because that's what gives utility to any currency. And it's very important to point out that no digital currency to date has achieved that you can actually buy your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If your neighbor is growing tomatoes, it's very difficult that you're going to use your credit card, or it's very difficult that you're going to use your Bitcoin. But with seeds, it's already like that. And we already have communities around the world that are organizing around regenerative agricultural communities and already using that liquidity. But of course, there's other layers of liquidity, and the ultimate liquidity is to be able to go in and out easily from fiat, which is very liquid. So really a shout out also to Keith, who's on the back. We are co-founders of a bank in Panama that is right now integrating seeds into that bank. So what we are able to do now is we can have a Panamanian digital bank that has also a credit card, and you can exchange your crypto assets, hopefully seeds, into fiat on and off as much as you want. And that process is still going to take a couple months to get the development done, but that's also going to provide that next layer of liquidity.
So we could have access to that in a couple months?
As soon as it's
February,
done in development.
March?
Depending on our developers. It's always hard to say milestone development, but that's the idea.
Wow.
I would like to hop in. Just pass me. So I'm a very low tech guy, though I read a lot about cryptos. I did not put up my wallet maybe, I don't know, a couple of months ago, mainly for political reasons, but that's a different side story, because I personally find the vast majority of cryptocurrencies out there just aggravating the problems of casino capitalism. Just a very political, personal opinion, but anyhow, is what I wanted to mention is, I don't know if any of you ever tried to found like community, buy a plot of land. A lot of people have that dream, right? Buy a plot of land, get like a couple of dozen people together, build community. So first of all, I'm a community born child, so kind of like I grew up with that. So secondly, I tried to pull together 2 times community. And I'm doing this actually on a big chunk of land, like 50 kilometers out of Berlin. On a beautiful lakeside nature reserve with 1,500 lakes. I'm just mentioning this because usually when you come up like with a bigger amount of people, let's make it like 25. So we're talking about like a medium group size. So I'm not talking about 250 people. Usually the problem that comes up, and which you can perfectly kind of model with the DAO and the DHO already existing, people bring multiple forms of capital. And they're all valuable, right? They have like IP, they have intellectual capital, they have like network capital. Some people really have like cash in the bank, or their parents or themselves. And usually this is like very difficult to mimic. So what I just wanted to incentivize is that literally for the very first time in humanity, all these beautiful dreams to build like community, but in a transparent way, right? Where some people can be invited that might not really have the cash in the bank, but they have interesting contact, or they might contribute because they are really good in like setting the agricultural, permacultural part up, or other people are good at in like marketing. They, you know, like the whole bartering issue of how do you bring that in when you slice the pie in terms of like the contribution to like, yeah. So anyhow, I just wanted to like give this as a couple of examples, because it literally makes it in a pretty gamified, easy to understand environment, makes it possible.
I just wanted to open it up for a moment to see if there are any questions in the room. Anyone have any burning questions?
Would you mind stopping the seat to ask?
Come on up here.
Because then it's like live, and also after that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the meantime, gamification is absolutely key, and that's also something that I would recommend to Tulum, because the best way to enjoy things, to create things, is while having fun, playing and gamifying. So you can really gamify, trash collection, gamify how to solve the sewage system. So that's a great call.
All right, right on. And my question, you talked about several different fiat kind of currency-backed systems, and you talked about the financial institutions and how they're kind of their structure. Then you talked about the organizations of seeds and how you're kind of like backing the organizations and backing the worth of the currency. Are you familiar with any organizations that are currently doing that, but like focusing on, like you said, like with data, like geolocation data, facial data, genomics data, right? Like actually like using our resources and monetizing our human data genomics as a currency form?
There are a lot of those out there. Some for more degenerative purpose, but there's also a lot for regenerative purpose. For example, some of the things we're working right now is one of the instances that we have for a DHO is a land trust DAO, where we have right now land holdings from regenerative stewards around the world aggregating and pooling land together. And one of the things that we're determining there is using data. Nowadays, there are sensors, IoT, for example. We have a partnership in Costa Rica with something that's called the Carbon Underground. So we can essentially have sensors that cost less than $3 that go into the soil that can measure carbon sequestration in real time. And what we're able to do then, it really becomes a very attractive vehicle for collaborative impact investment, for impact investors who can say, yes, I want to invest in regenerative agriculture, and I can see in real time how much carbon is being sequestrated. So that really opens up the level of transparency in terms of like leveraging that data and really giving value to it.
What's also interesting, I was talking to Will Ruddick, who's doing complementary currency systems in Uganda, and he was saying another thing you could do with NFTs is actually NFT those impacts, the amount of carbon that's sequestered, and then sell that NFT to people who impact investors or corporations or organizations that actually want to have some types of offsets.
Absolutely. And there the whole concept of NFT is a really elegant way to provide liquidity for things around purpose. So really raise capital. You can, if you have an idea of a purpose and you can get enough people on board to contribute to that, the NFT is a perfect vehicle for that. Whether it is bond structures, derivative structures, land holdings, there is a whole universe in the Web 3.0 to explore.
I just wanted to cite some examples. So me as the early bird, when I get up here at 5 a.m. and go to the beach like for sunrise, usually it's the most disenfranchised always in our societies, at least in the societies that I know, that take care that the environment, most of us like very privileged people use and like where we're staying and buying the stuff and throwing it away to clean up, for example, the beaches. So, and my gut feeling would be so that Regen Tulum can strive and really incentivize the people. Actually, it could be done with really simple things. So one would be, how would it be if we would reward the, usually it's the Mexicans, right? Who clean up the beaches, and I have no idea what they are paid, but definitely not a lucky sum, right? And not a decent amount of money for the money they're chipping in. And secondly, I'm asking myself if there could not be like something like waste collecting stations or so, where that again could be tied. I mean, some countries are really very successful of that. One of which is, for example, India, where people are really paid, for all the PET bottles, they're collecting. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw in some ideas of, how we, Regen Tulum could like activate a broader community of people really living here, and also like all the different, let's say, parts of the society living.
There are already a lot of initiatives out there that can join in.
Yeah, and glue them together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we've been thinking about in terms of switching up how we're operating, we have a council, but there was the idea that came up recently that we could expand the council membership to having organizational members where they would have a representation on the council as well.
It's amazing, yeah. You could even make that every council member has to contribute at least in some time, and that kind of is a membership contribution. Amazing. And then you also have a share in the token.
No, we do need to make it retroactive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so much work's been done, we haven't really captured it.
And the basis of this is essentially accounting, contribution accounting. So if you guys as a group come together in terms of like who's been doing that what, and you guys align that, you can really request then tokens to reward those also in retribution, as long as there's alignment in the group and a clear way forward, for sure. And to also give you guys some suggestions in terms of what I've been doing in the last years, seeding bioregional decentralized economies or bioregions like that, is essentially, I always start with identifying the regenerative leaders, which is people like you. What we do is then bring in the multi-stakeholder network around regeneration, whether it is the local government, whether it is the NGOs, whether it is the landholders, whether it is the people on the ground. As more diverse and well represented, the better, because that's, again, the cohesion in terms of unity and towards shared purpose, that's fundamental. And once you bring them together, what you do is sort of like a dragon dreaming process in terms of, okay, where are we and where do we want to be as a community in, let's say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What's the grand vision? And allow everybody to kind of express that and visualize it. And from that, you can really easily identify roles. Okay, if we want to do that cleanup campaign and we want to fix the roads, what do we need? What are the individual steps we need to do that? Then you guys can cluster yourselves around circles or guilds. And eventually, once you have those roles defined and those value attributions to it, all you need to do is start and represent token representation. And what you do then is then bring in investment to that, because you're already showcasing the impact that you're able to do. It's already tokenized and accounted on the blockchain, so that's already a perfect investment vehicle. And what then you do is just monitor the long-term benefits of the landscape, ecosystem, society, and you continue that process of identifying and regenerating.
So you were saying that there are some offers that you want to make to the Regen community, and I'm just wondering, if we were to work with you and your software, would you or someone else be there to handhold whatever team we put together to actually make this happen?
Yeah, so definitely, I would, as a member of the Mesoamerican bioregion, this is also my family, so very grateful to be here and co-create this with you. And what we're already planning from Costa Rica is already ecological corridors, really bridging those borders. Imagine if we can connect Panama all the way to Tulum and allow biological corridors to be rewilded, all of those things in alignment. And one more thing, we have, for this Mesoamerican bioregion, of which I consider Tulum, we have already a seeds grant for giving value to regeneration. So as soon as you guys are able to define those roles, define those structures, reach out to me with sort of like the minimum viable society that we're talking about, and we can already start injecting at least seeds to that.
Yeah.
And maybe from my part, so I'm for the first time here in Mesoamerica, but being a born community child, so being pretty much in that space my whole life and working in it since 14 years. I come from B2B sales. I built up a B2B magazine on sustainability issues. It's really for the first time we really get tailwind from unlikely allies. So I would really totally incentivize us here in Tulum, to not think too small. Maybe also not directly shoot for whatever, like $1 billion in a month, but more think of 1 million in a couple of months. So don't set the bar too low. Because usually when you structure a project and you bring in people here, even the unlikely allies, precisely those that are polluting, right? I mean, you can always ask them for a fraction of their, net profit. There are wealthy families here, so don't think too small. That's the only thing I wanted to saw here, to seed here. So I think that the right amount of community activation, showcasing it, have a couple of like key metrics, and then really try to raise some funds that also allow to like pay some downstream capacity and stuff like that. Yeah.
When you talk about $1 million, are you talking about euros, pesos, or dollars?
Well, in my
seeds.
In my life, I was certainly talking about euros. So what falls out of my mouth was like 1 million euros, for example. And also there, like with everybody that has ever been like in the founding process, it's always more difficult to hunt for 10,000 than for 1 million. It's like always the same, right? But it's almost as if you can like seed yourself a minimum viable society, activate the local people, get some support. And then, I mean, I'm pretty sure if you knock on like just a random number of on like 100 doors of people that like, run big estates, have big turnovers, then you can be sure you also have some big partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to get your opinion, Franz, on something that I heard. I was over at Art Basel about a week or so, 2 weeks ago, and I was on a panel about NFTs, and it just so happened that I was sitting next to this brother named Robert Gray, and he was speaking about the donations that he's been getting from DAOs. They've been putting in proposals to DAOs all across the world, and they have an art gallery. I think it's IRL Art in Denver, and they've been getting a ton of contributions from DAOs. So is that another viable source of funding for us?
Absolutely. So there's right now billions of dollars and Bitcoin and a lot of things being held by DAOs right now. And if it's in the right purpose and the right intention, there is a lot of capital to be tapped into. And I also want to highlight a few aspects of why this is so important, because the traditional way of investment is, okay, I'm a small venture, invest in me. Obviously, the risk in that is always high. But what we're doing here as a ecosystem of organizations and individuals, sharing some basic infrastructure, sharing an accounting system, so you're distributing that risk and creating a greater impact. So simply by doing that and showcasing that you're an aligned ecosystem working for the same cause, you already become orders of magnitude more investable for the old capital markets too. So that's also something that is the power of unity that attracts that capital, which moves us forward.
I even think before mentioning like the de-risking from the ecosystemic approach and reach for investment. I also definitely wanted to incentivize like going to classical philanthropy. I mean, if you set up like a minimum viable society / product / organization, then also classical philanthropy is like more than happy to chip in. I would say I would do that in parallel, right? So because some people are really interested in like the tax deducing part of it, and some are like more inclined in like, let's say the funky new asset class, to invest in.
Yeah, and I just want to pipe in here and say, in the next weeks, I'd like to identify a number of different team members, and that includes grant writers, fundraisers, business development folks that will get compensated for their effort. It also includes, someone to do marketing and social media full-time or part-time, operations. There's project management, events, etc., to really have a solid foundation for us to move forward as a DAO. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll work for seeds.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And yeah, that's a kid where, you can get very creative. Some of the things that, for example, in Lake Atitlan, where we've been kind of stewarding the process of envisioning, we've come up with concepts around, for example, bounties that you can have. Okay, one article written receives this much in reciprocity. Or let's say 10 kilos of trash collected receive this reward. So sort of like this gamified bounty collection for identifying what needs to be regenerated in Tulum would be something very fun.
And so they don't have to put in a proposal to turn in some trash, because you've got it already programmed in that's something that, if 10 people do it, they get compensated. If 20 people do it, if 100 people do it, it's not like a new proposal every time.
Depends. So it would be, for example, for bounties like that, you can have it open-ended in terms of value going in and then value goes out. But for example, for roles, you can also define, okay, I'm looking for 5 communication people. And that's something that when you guys have your Regen Tulum website, I think you guys do, is also about announcing these roles. Let's say we're hiring 10 communication specialists. We're hiring 5 grant writers. So you can continually signal what you need, and you would receive then a request for that employment, where you guys can check out the profile and say, okay, we select you to join the cooperative, and you already receive that value exchange. And that can be adapted as you go. And
they can get some of our currency and some fiat, maybe, if we've got fiat in
so if you
treasury.
What I would suggest is you start your Regen Tulum fund, which brings in the fiat, so you can actually bootstrap liquidity. Say if you are earning $3,000 in seeds and you have a sufficient enough liquidity pool, you can say, okay, 1/3 of that every month we can provide liquidity, so that people can also operate, pay the rent, pay the things that still you can't buy with seeds in that, and slowly transition and really adapt that liquidity according to what you have.
Is this exciting to anyone here? Yeah? Okay, good.
I would like to open up for more questions, or maybe also contributions. Are there? Yeah? You want to?
And more people can come up and just be ready to jump on the mic.
Yeah. In the meantime, while you get set up in the mic, I wanted to also point out, in Guatemala, we talked to the local community and asked them, what are the roles that have been historically foundational that in today's economy have been forgotten? And the answers that came up were incredible, like midwives, for example, or spiritual healers that are so fundamental to society, but in today's economy, they have no remuneration. So you can imagine these healers trying to sell their gift, which obviously blocks it. So some of the things we're exploring there is a universal earned income for people who provide those gifts without any sort of need to control or sell their gifts. So that's also new ways of forming it.
Oh, that's beautiful, because a lot of times they're not even supposed to be selling some of those things.
Exactly.
Right?
We have a program to regenerate the entire lake basin as a watershed. So right now, I've been also invited to be advisor to the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, and I'm pushing forth that the first year of that decade should all be focused on watersheds and water regeneration. So from Lake Atitlan, right now we're also partnering with the Lake Constance, Lake Bodensee, and having, like you have city twinnings, we want to do watershed twinnings. So really,
have you connected with ecosystem restoration camps?
Yes.
Okay.
John Liu.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm so happy you said what you just mentioned about the healers, and it's more of like the super local people, right? We're kind of a different breed here. We're nomadic, we're international, globalized people, and then there's the locals. So my question to you, Franz, is about the limitations of somebody acquiring a passport. There's people who don't even have IDs, so how do we create access points for the people who are picking up trash to have seeds and have a wallet, or a passport, I should say, and participate, bring them in so they can, I see it from my project. I'd like the people who work at my community to have passports.
Absolutely.
But they might not even have a smartphone, right?
Absolutely.
And they need to have a certain ID. Like, can I create different passports for my workers?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a very important question, and it's a fabulous question. You're absolutely right. You know, the hurdle to access to technology is still a hurdle to overcome, and a lot of people, the reality is that they cannot even afford a smartphone that we normally can. So we have some solutions for that. We see it in the community. In each passport, you can have multiple accounts. So one of the things that we see is beautiful, that the phone becomes like a center for community, that everybody can kind of manage their phones, their accounts, and already distribute. So it becomes like a unifying factor. That's one side. In the other side, and it's also an invitation for Regen Tulum, is when we have regenerative development programs and we identify active members who don't have a smartphone, we keep a list. We're already accounting for that gap. And we have a wonderful partnership out of Finland right now that is working all about refurbishing mobile phones. So we're creating this ecosystem where old phones can be brought into hotels. The hotels who receive it, or the people who donate it, receive a value exchange in seats. The people who are hosting those funds and receiving it and then sending it to be refurbished also receive seats. So creating essentially an economy out of refurbishing phones that can be then gifted back to the community and empower with that. So that's the invitation to map the phone gaps and share that with the community so that we can also collaboratively make ends meet.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that here in Mexico, they repair things too. So we could certainly start something like that here and actually have it locally repaired and support the local businesses to do it as well. Because my iPhone went out and I was in Miami. I went into the Apple store trying to get it fixed. They said, "Oh no, we don't fix anything like this. Give us $400. We'll give you an identical phone. You can't upgrade though." I brought it back to Mexico. They fixed it for $30. So yeah, I think that we can figure out a way when people are finished with their phones to gift them, get them fixed up and gift them to people in the community.
Fantastic.
I also did not want to leave today's meeting without offering at least a couple of opportunities where I can help spur Regen Tulum. So I have the feeling once you have like a minimum viable organizational structure and you have like prototype, like for example, an ocean cleanup or something, and you can like showcase a sufficiently enough stable organization to the outside, I can definitely provide access also to grant-making foundations. I'm supporting a startup from San Francisco. They're building Open Future Coalition to break up the traditional barrier in between philanthropy and impact investing. So there's like kind of like on the classical verticals for like water treatment, refugee crisis, climate change, and all that stuff. So they're literally like it's now 120 organizations or so, out of which is truly some of the biggest grant-making foundations on the planet. What I wanted to incentivize with that is I think also in this like regenerative movement, we have what in like a for-profit environment you would call like sweat equity, right? You have that phase where you need to be able to like allocate a certain proportion of your lived experience, embodied human being, lifetime in that 3 dimensions here to really say, okay, I want to make that happen, and let's give it, for example, I don't know, half a year's timeline to sufficiently, launch something, do a nice, ocean cleanup, again, I said it, to then be able to interact like with people that can like feed in like capital and provide like bigger resources or stuff like that. Just wanted to make that point.
Well, just to be clear, Regen has been involved with, or our partner organizations are doing that type of work. So we have pictures, we have things that we can share along those lines already. I would love to just understand how many of you are aware of the Anywhere Festival that's planned for Sianka? Has anyone heard of that? Anyone? No one's really heard of that besides Carolyn? Carolyn, would you?
No, I just got the news today. They're planning a huge festival some people that are coming in here for all the parties, but it's a festival for 1,000 people near the arch of Shankan. They've already started destroying a huge big dune. They are important for turtles and everything else to flatten it out and set it up. But Michelle, you know more. Tell us more.
So, what's the
You
point
wanna-
of this? I mean, there is a project going on. What-
Well, I was just wondering, I wanted to see, well, first I wanted to make sure that there were no hosts in the room. But just wondering, you know, what people's awareness of that, and also let people know that I believe there's an action happening tomorrow around that demonstration. Tomorrow, Saturday, 9 a.m. And I don't know where that is, but at the Arch, at the Xiankan Nature Preserve tomorrow, 9 a.m. And does it go for hours, or is it just that? Don't know. Okay.
I'm just wondering, just for the live stream. I mean, all I really wanted to do for the live stream is like to enable you, because after that again it will be like cut by Azim, who was writing me, a guy sitting in Tallinn, amazing guy in the background who will then like cut it, so so you can use it for your purposes if it like makes any sense. If not, I would close the live stream, and we can maybe sit in a circle or so. I don't know. Just yeah.
Okay. So, hello. So, thanks everyone. Ending the broadcast now. And yeah, let's get a little bit maybe more interactive, or sit in a circle or something like that.